that in itself, that's a disinformation campaign to
Yes.
get people to shut up about it. And that's a problem. We know that the U.S. government has not exactly been clean in a lot of what they've done with the American people, specifically to the topic of UFOs.
Anna Paulina Luna is known today as a congresswoman from Florida, but her story takes a sharp turn back to her Air Force days. Long before politics, Luna claims she faced something she could never quite explain, an encounter in the skies that the Pentagon doesn't want you to know about. But can we trust her story? And who could be responsible for those mysterious flying objects? Join us as we break down Anna Paulina Luna's mysterious UFO encounter and the storm it set off in Washington. The airspace breach at Portland. To many people, Anna Paulina Luna is just another congresswoman, a member of the Republican Party, and the first Mexican-American woman elected to Congress from Florida.
Finally, District 13. This is an interesting one. It's received a lot of airtime with the political ads. Charlie Crist and Anna Paulina Luna, who really has marketed herself as sort of an anti-politician, a maverick of sorts, even though she is a Republican. Her ads don't outright state that, against Charlie Crist, who admits that he's a career politician, of course, the former governor of Florida.
But what if we told you there is more to Luna long before politics? It all started during a busy morning at the famous Portland Air National Guard base. Luna was still serving in the Air Force as an airfield management specialist. That day began as any other, with routine check-ins, flight schedules, and the quiet hum of radio chatter that kept the base in sync. Then, without warning, everything changed. It all started when a sudden alert came through, sharp and urgent, cutting across the regular background noise. The radar operator just spotted an aircraft moving into restricted airspace. There were no scheduled flights in that zone, and the nature of the intrusion was unclear. In a place where order and precision ruled everything, a strange object in the sky was not just unusual, it was serious, and what happened next changed everything. Keep watching for what comes next. Within moments, the base commander decided to launch an F-16. Scrambles happened only when there was a genuine need to respond fast, whether the cause was a foreign military jet, a civilian aircraft in trouble, or something more mysterious. The jet roared down the runway, engines burning against the cool Oregon air, disappearing into the distance to intercept whatever was in the skies. From her station on the ground, Luna listened in on the official communication channels. She could not see the chase directly, but the clipped transmissions gave her a sense of the situation unfolding above. The object was moving at speeds that were not typical for small aircraft, yet its flight pattern did not resemble the precise, purposeful routes of known military planes. The tracking data suggested sharp changes in direction and rapid acceleration, details that did not make sense when compared to anything she had been trained to recognize. As minutes passed, the tension on the base spread. This was not just another false alarm, nor the calm process of guiding a lost pilot to safety. The nature of the communications showed confusion, the kind of uncertainty that military training usually worked to eliminate. When the F-16 returned to base, it was impossible not to notice the change in the pilot's attitude. The man who stepped out was not the same as the one who had climbed into the cockpit earlier. He showed a stiffness that was not from fatigue, but from something far less visible. There was no outward display of fear, but there was a heaviness in the way he moved, and an absence of the casual energy that often followed a successful mission. Luna approached him, curious and unsettled. The pilot gave only the barest answer to her question, providing nothing that could help her piece together what had happened. His voice was low, and his expression was like something seen, but not spoken of. That brief moment left her with more questions than answers, and none of them could be satisfied through official channels. Sit tight, because the story is just getting started. According to Luna's testimony, she was later reliably informed that the incident had been logged internally, but the report was marked with restricted access. It was not the kind of entry that most airfield personnel could open or review. That classification placed the event into a space where only certain eyes could see, and it meant that those outside the loop were expected not to press the matter. The feeling that stayed with her was clear. This had not been a drill, nor a training simulation disguised as a real-world event. It was also not an ordinary intercept of a slow-moving private plane or a routine enforcement of airspace boundaries. Whatever had happened above the skies of Oregon that day was unlike anything she had seen before in her time in service. But what Luna did not expect was that she would eventually re-encounter those events in the future. It would take years, and a very different role in a very different place, for her to revisit that moment. The next time she would face questions about what really moves through the air over America, she would no longer be standing on a runway in Oregon. She would be in the halls of power, hearing accounts from others who had their encounters, and seeing things that would make that day at Portland feel less like an isolated incident and more like the first page of a much larger story.
From relatively unknown to beating out 4 other Republican candidates in the U.S. House District 13 primary, 31-year-old Anna Paulina Luna has come a very long way in a very short time.
Stay with us, because the story is about to get a lot wilder. Anna Paulina Luna's attempts to find the truth. In the days after the incident at Portland, Luna could not shake the feeling that she had only been given the front cover of a much larger book. She kept replaying the scrambled intercept in her mind. She remembers how the pilot returned and the way the report had been sealed away from view. The official channels were closed to her, but the unofficial ones were still there if she was careful. She began speaking to the other pilots, slipping questions into conversations that would not raise eyebrows. Some would avoid the topic altogether, steering the discussion somewhere else. Others would answer with vague gestures and half-sentences, as if even hinting at the truth might get them in trouble. The airfield had its own language in the aftermath, fewer laughs in the break room, and conversations that dropped off when someone else walked in. Luna could tell this was not just another day of classified military work. This was something the usual rulebook did not cover. It became clear to her that the issue of unidentified aerial phenomena was treated carefully by the Air Force. It was not just about security clearance, it was about reputation. Pilots and crew knew that talking too openly about what they had seen could make them targets of quiet skepticism or career-damaging labels. Luna realized the silence was not only imposed from above, but also maintained by the fear of being dismissed by one's own peers. Still, she could not stop herself from trying to fit the pieces together. She started with the possibilities that made the most sense within normal military thinking. Perhaps it had been foreign technology, something advanced from another nation, pushing into restricted airspace to test response times. Or maybe it was one of the military's own classified craft, so advanced that even most personnel on base had no idea it existed. She considered those options seriously, but certain details refused to align with either theory. The object's sudden shifts in speed and direction did not match known propulsion limits. Things are about to get a lot more interesting, so sit tight. The radar profile of the flying object, from what little she could gather, had been inconsistent and hard to lock onto. Her training made her cautious. She approached the problem as she would any operational anomaly. First, she would rule out what it could not be. She thought about every aircraft she had studied and worked with, from heavy cargo planes to nimble fighters. None of them fit the pattern of what had moved over Oregon that day. Civilian planes, drones, and even experimental jets all had their limits, and this object seemed to ignore them. A part of her mind drifted to childhood memories of watching movies like E.T. and the X-Files episodes late at night. Those stories had painted UFOs with a kind of magic and mystery, but her reaction now was different. She did not panic, and she did not dismiss it as fantasy. If anything, she found herself curious. That curiosity clashed with her sense of duty. In uniform, there were lines you did not cross, even in thought. She had sworn to follow procedures, respect chains of command, and protect information. But the incident had lit a fuse in her, and ignoring it felt like letting go of something important. The pull between her role as a disciplined airfield specialist and her drive to understand the unknown became a quiet daily battle. In her mind, she worked to keep imagination separate from fact. Stories on television could make the skies feel like an endless stage for anything. But this was not fiction. This was radar, intercept orders, and a pilot returning without the usual confidence. The more she thought about it, the more she leaned toward a simple but unavoidable conclusion. The craft over Portland had been an unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Not a foreign jet, not a glitch in the system. Something truly unknown had crossed into their airspace and left without explanation. That conclusion was not comforting. If anything, it raised more questions than it answered. What was it doing there? Why had it left so abruptly? And perhaps most troubling of all, why did those who knew the most seem determined to say the least? Luna did not yet have the language or the reach to push further, but she could feel the story building around her. In time, she would find herself far from the runway at Portland, in rooms where the conversations about unidentified aerial phenomena were taken seriously. The stakes in those rooms would be higher, and the information harder to ignore. Stay tuned as we move into Luna's work on unidentified anomalous phenomena right in the heart of the U.S. Senate. Anna Paulina Luna's investigations in the U.S. Senate. Luna admitted that she never set out to be a politician. Her life had always been in the skies, flying missions. But the encounter she witnessed and the silence that followed began to change her. She saw how quickly stories were buried, how colleagues whispered but refused to speak on record, and how the public was kept in the dark. Slowly, she realized that staying in the cockpit would never give her the reach to change anything. When invitations came for her to testify before committees, she spoke carefully but firmly about what she had seen. Her calm authority made an impression. Some lawmakers dismissed her, but others encouraged her to step further into public service. The calls grew louder until, with support from a small but determined circle, she ran for office. Her reputation as a disciplined pilot who refused to bend to pressure helped her win. By the time she walked into Congress, she carried not only her own story but also the trust of those who believed the truth about unidentified phenomena deserved daylight. From the start, Luna sought out like-minded. She became part of the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Caucus, a new group formed by lawmakers who believed ignoring these encounters was no longer an option. She did not just sit as a member, she took the lead. Soon, she was chairing the task force that pressed agencies to open their vaults and release long-guarded files. In this new role, Luna saw things most Americans would never glimpse. Behind locked doors, she reviewed photographs of objects recorded by military instruments, objects described bluntly as not made by humanity. These were not shaky lights or rumors. They were crafts moving in ways that broke every known law of flight. Some files went further, speaking of movements that seemed to slip outside the boundaries of time and space, the kind of descriptions that left seasoned officials silent. The language unsettled her. References appeared to interdimensional beings, to presences that could not be explained as simply advanced technology. For Luna, the shock was not just in the evidence, but in the thought that such possibilities had been quietly studied for years without the public's knowledge. She began making connections across history. Reading through her notes late at night, she thought about the ancient texts she had studied in passing. The apocryphal writings and old stories told of visitors who came and went beyond human control, messengers who stepped through worlds. What once sounded like myth now seemed to echo the modern testimonies she was hearing in closed sessions. Whistleblowers were invited. Military personnel came forward, some from places like Eglin Air Force Base, describing encounters swept aside or hidden in reports no one outside the chain of command would see. They spoke of wreckage stored away, of craft studied in secret. But that is not all. With every testimony, the burden on her shoulders grew heavier. She held secrets she could not share openly, yet she felt the pull of responsibility to those who trusted her to fight for disclosure. Nights grew longer as she weighed the danger of saying too much against the cost of saying nothing at all. In Congress, debates turned fierce. Some colleagues argued that releasing such information would harm national security or cause panic. Others, like Luna, insisted that the truth belonged to the people. She listened to heated exchanges where the meaning of safety, secrecy, and trust collided, and she held her ground. Her conviction was steady. There was something in these encounters that defied present science, something no one could yet explain. It was not belief, but fact drawn from the weight of the files she had seen, the pilots she had spoken to, and the history she was now connecting. Luna knew this was only the beginning. She had entered Congress to push for transparency, but what she found was far larger than she imagined. Like other UAP researchers, the public rarely show enough support to people like Luna. And that takes us to the next part of the story. Don't stop watching because you will love it. Anna Paulina Luna's unending search for truth. Luna is still actively pursuing the UAP problem as a representative, but it is also interesting to mention the public's reaction to her efforts. When Luna's claims reached the public, the reaction was anything but quiet. For some, her words were credible because they came from a decorated pilot and now a member of Congress. For others, her story sounded like the same old science fiction wrapped in new packaging. The split was clear. Fascination on one side, deep skepticism on the other. The media wasted no time. Popular outlets like People and the New York Post splashed her statements across their pages, painting her as a bold figure willing to challenge silence. The Times of India and The Sun ran their own features, highlighting the tension between Luna's voice and the dismissive tone of her critics. The coverage turned her into a lightning rod for debate, where her every word was picked apart. Supporters pointed to her record of military discipline and her years in the cockpit, while detractors questioned whether her sudden rise in politics had pushed her to exaggerate. Inside Washington, words are also spreading. Some accused Luna of chasing attention, suggesting her motives were political rather than genuine. Others wondered if she had simply been caught up in the thrill of classified briefings and was now overstating their meaning. Yet Luna's defense was steady. She reminded anyone who asked that she was not repeating rumor or theory, but recounting what she had seen as a pilot and what she had reviewed as a lawmaker with clearance. Her confidence did not come from speculation, but from first-hand experience that she could not dismiss. The controversy also shows something larger than Luna herself. You see, for decades, unidentified aerial encounters had lived on the edges of conversation, dismissed as fantasy or conspiracy. Now, with her pushing the issue into committee hearings and task force reports, the subject was no longer fringe. It had become part of the congressional agenda, debated under the same lights as foreign policy and defense spending. But there is another interesting question. What if the craft described in those secret files were not ours? Then whose were they? The idea that unknown technologies could move through our skies unchecked unsettled even the most skeptical lawmakers. Beyond security, what if our adversaries have made breakthroughs in science and engineering? China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran probably now possess something we don't even understand. If any of these crafts were reverse engineered or even partially understood, the impact on energy, transport, and defense would be beyond measure. Public trust was another consequence. Citizens wanted to believe their government would not hide discoveries that could affect national security. For Luna, this was the heart of her mission. She often reflected on the idea of a modern truth embargo, a wall of silence that had stood for too long. She believed it was time to break that wall, not recklessly, but in a way that respected both safety and the public's right to know. She wanted to show that governance could hold mysteries without burying them. In her mind, this was about bridging two worlds, the imagination sparked by science fiction and the responsibility of real-world leadership. Still, there was no escaping the uncertainty. Luna never pretended to hold definitive proof that solved the mystery. What she carried were testimonies, radar records, images, and the voices of men and women who had risked everything to speak. Together, these painted a picture that was too consistent to dismiss, yet too incomplete to answer every question. This tension kept the debate alive. Was it evidence of something extraordinary, or simply a phenomenon science had not yet explained? Luna accepted that the answers might not come quickly. What mattered to her was keeping the conversation alive, pushing institutions to admit what they had long locked away, and refusing to let the issue slip back into silence. Thank you for staying with us. Do you believe Paulina Luna's UFO story? Share your opinions with us in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.